This podcast is a member of WildGamesProductions.com and D20Radio.com.
I'm Chuck Norris, and I approve this game.
Between the time when gamers played with miniatures and chainmail and the rise of the Wizards of the Coast, there was an age of advanced role-playing undreamed of. And onto the Skygax, destined to bear the jeweled crown of TSR upon a troubled brow, it was given to teach us all how to roll for initiative.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
The Roll for Initiative podcast. This is volume number 3, issue number 145. DM Vince sitting with DM Matt.
Hello, everyone.
And DM Nick.
Hey, yo, everybody.
And DM Chad is off this week. He is off doing DM Chad things, so he'll be back next week, hopefully. Anyway, on to the show. So, Nick, what have you been up to in the last couple of weeks?
Good question. Okay, fine. No,
Thank you, Nick. Matt, no, I'm kidding.
Stay on target. Just really getting ready for Origins, which will be in a couple of weeks from now, since we've from the recording of this show. Other than that, doing more with the new Castle Greyhawk campaign, which is coming along really well. I have mentioned in the past, and that's pretty much it. Not a whole lot else on the gaming end. So yeah, not a whole lot else.
Okay, for me, I've been running my bi-weekly AD&D life campaign, pretty much, so to speak. No epic stories, just running a weekly campaign. I'm going to be, in August, switching over to West End Games Ghostbusters for a while.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, run that for a little while, see how that runs. Give a little break from D&D and go back, recharge the D&D batteries, the usual.
Mm-hmm.
And getting ready for North Texas RPG Con this week, depending on when this goes out. And either will happen already or is about to happen. It all depends on when Matt's pregnant ankles let him actually do something.
Yes.
Yes. Just pregnant ankles.
Yes, they're very, very, very pregnant ankles.
Not
so Matt,
just pregnant, but very pregnant.
Yeah.
What have you been doing with your pregnant ankles there?
Not a whole lot, because, the joys of you get a strep, and then next thing you know, the fat tissue in your shins are swelling up to the size of grapefruits.
Wow.
Not fun. But, so really not a lot of gaming. I did make a purchase, so I finally picked up Toon and the Toon Ace catalog. So.
Oh, good. Cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, cool.
Yeah, I found both of those at Half Price Books for $15 total. So I'm like, I have to buy these.
Toon is such a great, one-shot beer and pretzels game if you've got nothing else going on.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those, here, let's just have some wacky, silly fun and just go crazy and have a blast.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that game is, other than being really, really fun, that's not a problem, though, is that if you throw some really hardcore D&D players into it, they have no clue what to do with their own
Right.
game.
They might hate it.
Albeit, I am curious at this point, what if you tried running like a Sin City-style game in Toon?
Hmm.
That
would be interesting.
Yeah, just you take the Toon rules and all the Toon logic, but make it Sin City. It's like, there's this web show from a few years back called There Will Be Brawl. It's basically the Nintendo Super Smash Bros. Arcade game, the video games, and all those characters, but if you were to throw them into like a Sin City type noir setting.
Oh my gosh.
Mario's a drug addict. And then Kirby is like a Hannibal Lecter serial killer. And like Donkey Kong's a muscle for one of the mob bosses that, like, Ganon, Link's enemy, is one of the mob bosses, and Diddy Kong's another mob boss. And it's just Samus from the Metroid series is a stripper. I mean, it's just insane. But yeah, so that's an example of how you can take like a lighthearted, funny, ha-ha, like setting and actually make it serious. So,
Oh my god.
yeah, it's like nine short episodes, totally worth watching. There Will Be Brawl.
Okay.
There Will Be Brawl.
Yes.
I'll have to look that one up.
Yeah.
And it also kind of ties into our show today, too, actually. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yes.
Well, we won't talk about that just yet.
No.
Not just yet.
No. So we don't have any stars this week, right, Nick?
No stars, but before I forget, I wanted to mention that where I was talking about getting prepped for Origins, and I think this is going to happen with Gen Con 2, is being the 40th anniversary of D&D. It's already 40 years now, guys. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
40 years. Didn't they just have the 30th anniversary like 10 years ago? But they are doing a whole bunch of, I don't know if it's Wizards of the Coast that's putting on, but there's like a 40th anniversary events that are going on at Origins. They might be going on at Gen Con of like classic adventures that you can participate in. And at Origins, they have Tomb of Horrors, Castle Amber, Ravenloft, I think from 3rd edition, the Sunless Citadel. I think that's a 3 module, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, you can sign up for these events and play in whatever edition they were written for. So my friend Jeff and I, we got into the Tomb of Horrors one for Wednesday night. So we're going to kick off Origins with a big bang and see how far we could get through the Tomb of Acererak, the Undying, the undead demi-lich dude who like will melt your brain.
Now, Wizards is doing this, or individual people are doing this?
You know, I don't remember. I think Wizards of the Coast might be doing it.
Yeah, or it might be like
So.
RPGA or something. Or...
Yeah. So at least that's what's going on at Origins. I don't know if Gen Con's having the same thing, but at Origins there's like events all through Origins from Wednesday through Sunday.
They
So if
never
you
usually
look
do anything for Origins, as well as wondering.
Yeah, apparently they really want to kick off the new edition of D&D big time. So,
Well, they do have to make up for the failures of 4E, so...
yeah, well, yeah.
All right,
That
cool.
goes
Well,
without saying.
if you're at Origins, look up Nick and Matt and meet up with them. Wear your RFI shirt if you have one.
If Matt, when his pregnant ankles, will let him go.
Yes, yes. If the pregnant ankles cooperate, because the other side effect of having pregnant ankles is walking long distances is not fun.
Did Chad say he was going to be there?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm gonna try. I'll try to hook up with Chad while I'm there, or at least some people from Dead Game Society should be showing up. So I'll be there with my friend Jeff. You know, look for me. I'll have Roll for Initiative on my tag, DM Nick. So come up to me, say hi, shake my hand. Don't punch me, not in the face at least, and everything will be good.
And experience points. The first person that punches Nick in the face.
Hey!
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No.
No?
In the face.
All right, cool. Let's go into some sage advice.
Sage advice.
Sage advice.
Sage advice. Hey.
Yeah. So we have some emails. You can email us at rfistaff@gmail.com or call us at 570-865-4210, the hotline, where nobody stands by.
No, not this week. We gave them all the week off.
Just a voicemail now. That's all it is. Our first email comes in from Face, not from the A-Team, but his name is Face. And he says, I'm listening to Volume 3, 143, where Nick and Vince mentioned they don't use and don't get alignment tongues. Well, no, that's not true, first of all. But anyway, I've used alignment tongues in the past and see it in a manner of speaking, a form of speaking of spoken communication, more of a language within a language, if you will. By carefully choosing words, you can convey a message of subtext that is independent of the normal usage of words being spoken. He recalls being stationed in Germany and speaking with his friends in front of a native English speakers. By using acronyms, jargons, and even inflection of the messages that were conveyed didn't match up what was being said overtly. Of course, this only worked because we all had the same background. You could probably witness this if you got a bunch of Monty Python fans together, but I don't think Vince would like that. Say no more, nudge, nudge. Hey, I like Monty Python.
Yeah, I do too.
I don't know. I use alignment tongues. I just, don't exactly get them, but I guess he kind of put it better.
If you put it that way, yeah, I understand. So all my years of 33 years of gaming, I have not used alignment tongue language. I mean, just never came across either as a player and seeing other DMs, DM, they've never used it as far as I recall. But hey, we're talking a long time ago. My memory gets kind of hazy, so who knows?
Well, you are old, Nick, so.
I am. I'm 43. In 12th century Europe, I would be considered an old man.
That's right, old man.
Yes.
So let's go on to our next email. I am hello, esteemed DMs. This one comes from David D. He says, or DM David D, excuse me. I am midway through listening to your beginner's guide episode. Like DM Vincent, I don't currently use weapon speed. However, after listening to the podcast, I think it might make the players put more time in considering their weapons and add a little more realism to combat order. My question to these hosts that use weapon speed is, how do you use strength to offset weapon speed? Currently, if a player has a 17 strength or higher, they would be able to swing that giant two-handed sword a little quicker. Thoughts? Thank you, and keep rolling.
Well, considering that I don't use weapon speed,
I don't think anybody on the podcast uses it, to be honest. I don't even think Chad uses it.
No. Chad's used it, I think, in the past, but it's not something he consistently does. Yeah.
I've never used weapon speed myself. Again, like alignment tongues, haven't ever used it. Never seen it used. Doesn't mean you can't.
No, and I mean, I can see the benefit of using it. It does make the differences between swords and pole arms a little more important.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I totally understand using them, and it's just, for me, it speeds up combat by not. And that's my primary concern.
I know. Yeah.
As for, though, saying you have a higher strength value, so therefore you can swing your sword quicker, strength doesn't always equal speed, and it's also more. And really, when it comes to swinging swords and things of that nature, it's more technique than raw power.
Right.
So I wouldn't give them like a weapon speed adjustment just because they had higher strength. Now, if you wanted to go and say, like, oh, since you have, like, weapon specialization, maybe you shave one off the speed or something, I could see that. Because it's more – weapon speed's more reflection of the bulkiness of the sword and the techniques of a skilled person using it than just, oh, you have more power, therefore you swing it quicker.
Right.
No.
One of the things I don't – if you want to – he's talking about realism – this is where, in my opinion, weapon speed breaks down. Because if you're just going to use, if your argument is weapon speed is a factor of like being realistic, yes, a dagger is faster than a halberd. But seeing actual combat, and I've seen this because I've done a few years in the SCA, that person with a halberd's going to knock that person all the way around if he's armed with a dagger.
Yep.
Because he's got the reach.
Right.
He's going to keep you up. He's going to keep you like 5-6 feet out, and you're not going to get near him. That's why I think the thing with weapon speed, if you're trying to come with that argument about being quote unquote realistic, I don't think it holds any water.
Right. Until you start actually measuring the inches between characters in combat, you're not going to get truly realistic. Because
technically,
the biggest thing in like melee combat is managing distance.
Right, and technically, if you have something like a polearm or two-handed sword, or something with some length to it, a lance, spear, trident, whatever it may be, you're going to technically go first in melee
Yeah.
because you got the weapon reach.
Right. If somehow your opponent was able to get past your reach, you have a minimum distance you need to keep to be effective, and once that gets breached, your spear's kind of useless.
Maybe.
Well, I'm just thinking like if you're within like 6 inches, like almost like chest to chest, your spear isn't doing much. It's a glorified bow staff at that point.
No, it is not.
Whereas that
is
dagger
correct.
at 6 inches is really effective.
You choke up on the spear. That's all.
You could.
Yeah.
Or you just But
different melee weapons have different effective ranges. It's just that we typically don't choose to bog ourselves down with that in melee combat.
And there's the rub, right? Because I'm sure you're the same way. We want to keep it as simple as possible.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right.
And I don't even do initiative like by the book anyway. I use detail and initiative, so that's how I do it.
I think DM Mike said it the best from Save or Die podcast. He noticed, and I kind of agree with him. As we get older and play these games, we'll want to get less bogged down with rules and just have fun. So less time we have to spend on worrying about rules, the more fun the game seems to be for most people.
Yep.
It could be an age thing too.
Yeah, we just
It
want
could
our
be.
stuff to work. It's like, think of when you get say like your first computer and you want to like build it, tear it apart, you're tweaking it, you're doing all this. About 10 years later, you just want the thing to boot up so you can surf the internet.
Yeah.
You're past the point of tweaking the thing just for the sake
But
of tweaking.
if you are completely happy with using weapon speed and trying to figure out how strength might factor into it, go ahead. I don't have an answer myself because I don't use it. I got to be honest.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
how it would work, I don't know.
Right.
But as long as if you're happy using those things and your players are happy using those things, go for it. As long as you feel happy and you're comfortable with it, hey, it's your game. You do what you want with it.
Right. And that's the great thing about this game. Everyone can make it their own.
Yep.
Everything
I've
in the,
always termed it. It's very modular.
yeah, everything in the DMG, everything in the player's handbook, they're suggestions, not rules that are written in stone. So figure out what makes the most sense to you. And if you want more realism in your game, great, go for it. Figure that out and share it with us because there's probably other people like you.
So I guess the short answer is I don't know.
Yeah.
Make it your own,
Yeah, pretty much.
or just don't use it. That's
Yeah.
all.
Or just don't use it.
Every home campaign has their own internal logic that makes perfect sense in that rule-wise. And that's all it's important. As long as it makes sense with inside its campaign, it doesn't matter what everyone else is doing.
Yeah. And no one's going to say you're doing it right or wrong here.
No. And there's no official RPGA for first edition anymore. There's no official anybody for it.
Is there even an RPGA still around?
Yeah, there is actually still RPGA.
Okay.
They run events at Gen Con. They're running they're the ones running all the D&D next at Gen Con.
I thought they were going to be like Adventures in Time or something, or whatever the name of that dumb group they made up. The Copy Pathfinder.
Oh, the copycat of the Pathfinder Society?
A copycat that they decided, let's make our own group up. The Copy Pathfinder's idea, which is a copy of RPGA to begin with, but
Right. Yeah, the idea of having an organized group to run RPG events so people have a semi-homogenized experience isn't horribly new or creative.
No.
no, it's just copied off of a copy for a copy. So
Right. But if it gets more people playing and they're having fun, more power to them.
yeah, of course, definitely. But you think that they would have their own real ideas, but anyway. For weapon speed, granted, I don't use it. I don't like playing with it, and I won't play in a game with it because I'm not going to be that one guy that sits there miserable and ruins the game for everybody else. So
Yeah.
I'd rather just sit out of the game and just watch or play my own game with some other people rather than ruin other people's times. That's just me. If you think I'm a jerk for that, then let's go on to the next email. Well, I think that's fair. I mean, why should I ruin other people's times? But why should I be that guy sitting in the game ruining it for everybody else? Because I don't like that one role.
Good point. I'm with you there.
Wouldn't you rather me just leave?
Yeah, I would. Get out of here now. Leave. Go.
That's been issue 145. Okay, so our next email comes in from Steven. He just wants to send a quick compliment. Thanks for sending chills up my spine with the Tales from the Dark Side music used in the feature intro. That intro always used to creep me out whenever the show came on. I was more scared by the intro than the show. Steven.
Well, we're glad to do that for you, and just don't send us the bill from your psychiatrist.
Yeah, that's actually kind of funny because I listen to like a paranormal cryptozoology podcast, After Dark, and they were talking. And they were talking about things people fear, and that was one of the things that kept coming up is that theme song, and then the Unsolved Mysteries theme. So many people wrote in saying that song gave them the chills.
Did they talk about the chupacabra?
They talked about the chupacabra.
The goat sucker.
Yes. They also talked about creepy dolls.
Ooh.
And yeah, just all kinds of fun stuff. But yeah. Good podcast if you're into that type of thing.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so our last email. Oh, no, second to last email, excuse me. Hello, Sages of 1E.
Wow.
In the coming Yeah, I don't know. In the coming weeks, my party will be fighting with a few orcs. The fighter, 7th level, usually rides a heavy war horse.
War what?
Yeah, well, whatever. War horse and fights with a heavy horse lance.
He fights with a heavy war ass? What?
He has a war donkey?
Yes, he does. And, Nick, you're fired. Go home.
The donkey named Pedro. The war ass.
You killed my father. Prepare to die.
Yes.
With a heavy warhorse lance in situations like this. Can you give me a quick primer on how to treat this combat? Should I give him one pass with the lance and then wait around to turn around and get set to charge again? Should I give the crowd of orcs a few attacks on the horse as it goes by? Any help is appreciated. Thanks for the podcast. You guys are great. Adam.
Well, Adam, we have an answer for you.
Mm-hmm. No, we don't.
Yeah, actually, we do.
It requires you to dust off a book, Vince.
Yeah.
No, I know. I don't want to dust off a book.
Yeah, well, it's the Wilderness Survival Guide.
Oh,
there is. On. Yes, there. Okay. The Wilderness Survival Guide. My God, mine still looks brand new. Oh, my gosh.
Orange spine? No.
Yeah.
Have a crack in it.
Page 86 and 87 of Wilderness Survival Guide. They have rules for melee combat from a mount and missile combat. So we'll just focus on the melee combat. So if an opponent is standing on the ground, a character astride a land-based mount who is engaged in melee combat with an opponent standing on the ground has an advantage of +1 to hit if the foe is the same size of the attacker, but receives no bonus if he is larger. So if you're fighting your orcs, you get a +1 to hit. If they were fighting trolls though, or ogres, there would be no bonus. But on the other hand, a mounted attacker must take a -1 penalty to hit against an unmounted opponent of smaller size. So if they were fighting goblins or hobbits,
yeah.
You would have a -1 to hit.
Yeah.
And a character who is on foot and fighting a mounted opponent, so this is for your orcs, they have a -1 penalty to hit regardless of the size of the opponent. However, if the character's to hit roll is exactly the number he would have needed to hit his foe, otherwise his attack hits the mount instead of the rider. So if your to hit was like a 14 and the orc rolled a 14, he hit the mount.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to roll better than that 14 to hit the rider, apparently.
Right.
Character on foot can choose to strike against the mount instead of the rider, which can often be a good tactic. And they have some rules on flying mounts, But that's pretty much it in a nutshell. But it's in the Wilderness Survival Guide.
As far as giving him a pass to the lance, yeah, I would definitely do one round. He attacks, runs past him, and he has to set up the next round again because you can't just kind of really do a 360 with a horse and run again. So.
Right.
Yeah, at that point, it would just come down to the basic movement rules for mounts.
Mm-hmm.
And how long it would take to readjust and set up. There was an issue of Dragon that had aerial combat, and it really went into detail. You might want to look in.
Covered it.
Yeah.
With Jason, I remember.
Yeah. Let's see.
That was one of the things he was really into was aerial combat.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have aerial combat rules in here, too, for the melee
Right,
combat.
but this went into, like, movement, so you may want to look into use some of those rules just for when it comes to turning and apply that maybe to your mount.
Mm-hmm.
Since the horse can't necessarily spin on a dime.
Be awesome if it could.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That would be a magical mount. It would be very, like, friendship is magical, perhaps.
Oh, God, you did not go there.
Really, man. I mean, come on.
I mean, really.
I have pregnant ankles.
We have a certain amount of decorum on this show, and you just crossed the line.
Yes.
Okay, so going forward, next issue, Matt, you're going back to producer role with a muted mic.
He just did the My Little Pony Friendship is Magic.
Yes.
Oh, my God.
You give it full attention. Thanks. Anyway, so there we go. There's your answer for that. Hopefully that helped in your combat with your game. Last email comes in from Jeff. He says, hi, you guys. Just wanted to ask quick questions. How do you keep track of time in your games? I believe we did an issue on that, right?
Yes, we did.
121 it was?
Yeah.
Did you guys say it was all about time, 121?
Yeah, 121.
Teaches you how to keep track of time in the game and what to use. I had referenced that one. And his second question is, what's the best way to prevent metagaming? Well, do you have 4 hours?
Yeah, we could do a whole show on that one.
Yeah.
How to prevent it.
Well, the one way to prevent it is don't use tropes. Don't use anything your players could ever have possibly seen before. That's one way.
Impossible.
No, that's way too much work.
Second thing is,
the better way is just have your players buy in and get caught up into the role playing. At which point they won't metagame because they're so into their characters they think like their characters.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, you have to be. I guess Reader's Digest form. It's a matter of trust.
Yeah. If
you're with a group of people that you've known and you trust them, then they won't metagame. They won't take things that they know that's player knowledge applied to their character knowledge stuff and ruin things. That there's an amount of trust there. And I guess that's the only way I can explain it. Now, that's easy to do, I would say, for the most part, in a home campaign, because there's people that you meet them all the time, right?
Right.
Now, at a convention, there's no way you're going to get around that unless you announce right up front, okay, this is the game, and rule number 1 is no metagaming. I mean, you could do that.
It's going to be an unspoken rule, dude.
Right.
It is kind of an unspoken rule, but there are people, they are gaming the system when they metagame,
Right.
They're using what they know about the rules and how things work in the game system, in the game mechanics, and using them to their advantage, even though we know that their characters would have no freaking knowledge of that, how outside of their worldview of what the game world is. So there are people like that. They game the system. They're not gaming in the game world per se.
And it happens at gaming stores a lot too. If you go to your favorite gaming store or comic book store and they allow you to game there and you meet with weekly people, yeah, you might make some good friends there, but you're going to get those people that are your friends that game. Like when I lived in Connecticut, one guy when we played, he would always be like, during the event, you'd be like, well, what happened to the sword? And you'd be like, what sword are you talking about? Never mind. Mr. I read the module ahead of time. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was always like, well, there's a +1 sword here. Where is it? Oh, there's no +1 sword here. What are you talking about? I read the module. I said, well, now you no longer have that sword. Good luck in defeating that monster at the end that you read about.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I did to one player, and that punished the whole party because of that, because one guy was an absolute jerk about it.
Yeah, he ruined it for everybody. And I think metagaming, but like you said, it ruins it for the rest of players. Also, I think it also ruins it for new players because this is entirely new to them. And when you have someone that's doing something like that, they're gaming the system the whole time, then they're going to pick up those bad tendencies of gaming the system, of metagaming. And it just ruins it for everybody because they're going to think that is the norm. That's how you're supposed to play. While in all actuality, you're not. And I don't know if it is indicative of what's been happening in the past few years or not. Would you say that metagaming is more prevalent or less prevalent or just about the same as it was in the past?
I've been lucky because the group that I've been playing with, when I go to the Reaper store, all those guys are really good guys and they don't really metagame at all. Mm-hmm. Then again, I throw the weirdest crap at people if you've heard any of the actual. Mm-hmm. So they don't know what the heck they're up against half the time, but they do like any normal player will do. If like you're fighting a monster, they'll kind of figure it out. I'll go, oh, I think it's this monster. Mm-hmm. Kind of metagaming, but you don't have to agree as a DM. You don't have to say, yeah, you figured it out. Just look at them and say maybe.
Well, I did one thing in my current Greyhawk campaign that hopes, if not eliminate metagaming, but keep it down to a minimum, is I think one of the a metagaming aspect is knowing what a monster is and what it does, its weaknesses, its defenses, and all that. And I think that I think that's one of the core things about when you're gaming a system, knowing all about the monsters. Even though technically, if you're playing a first level fighter, you've probably never seen a green slime before.
Right.
You've never seen, a shrieker or maybe not even a goblin for all you know.
Well, I'm going to say you might see goblins, kobolds, things like that, little low-level creatures, because a lot of those attack villages when looking for food and everything. So you might have seen them.
Or heard of them. You may not have seen it firsthand, but you've heard someone. It's much like some of your more arcane monsters your Magic users probably have read about or seen drawings of in their studies.
One of the things I've introduced in my game was like basically identifying the monster that you're fighting and knowing what you're fighting when you first encounter something. And I made it a percentage roll in my campaign. So I just did something like that and it works. And basically how I worked it out was you take the character's intelligence and wisdom, add them together, divide it by 2, and you get that average. Okay? And that's a percentage. And that might fluctuate depending on what your character class is. Like maybe a mage might have a ×2 to that, or barbarian might have a 1.5 times to that. So you take that score, and then you add that to the frequency value of that creature. Say it's like, I don't know, carrion crawler. Say they first time they're encountering a carrion crawler, okay? Let's say their monster identification is an average of, I don't know, we'll say 13, okay? Okay, so in my Greyhawk campaign, this is what I did. I did something like a identify monster skill for everybody.
Yeah.
And what it starts out is this, you have your intelligence and wisdom of your character, and you divide that by 2. That's like your baseline score. Well, I'll just use 13. Maybe that's your baseline score. And then whatever the frequency is of that monster. And let's say it's a carrion crawler, because that's what I opened up to in the the monster manual, and the frequency is uncommon. So that's a 20% chance. So I'll add, your 33 to your 13 to your 20. That's 33%. Okay. Now I have some modifiers to that. Okay. So like maybe if you're a magic user or an illusionist, you multiply that by 1.5 and then you do your roll. And then something like that. So they might see something. I'll describe it to them. I'll say, you see something that's multi-legged and multi-tentacled face, kind of looks like a gigantic centipede, but it's got tentacles all over its face. So, and they'll do their monster identification. And if they say, okay, I made it. So I'll give like 1d4 little tidbits about that creature that they might know. Like I'll say, okay, they get about 9 feet long, that this creature, this carrion crawler has, they can paralyze you with their tentacles, and stuff like that. So they won't know immediately when they see something, oh, it's a carrion crawler. They're going to have to identify it first. And I also say, you know what? Write it down what you've seen, so you won't have to roll again when the next time you see a carrion crawler, you know what it is. So that kind of diminishes the amount of metagaming, I guess, and it brings a little bit of mystery back to the game, especially if you have players who are more experienced. They're veteran players that have been playing for a long time, and I wanted to instill a sense of wonder into the game again. So, and it seems to be working out okay. So that's something you can try. Just something I've experimented with it, and it seems to work. So, give it a go.
A little bit of math there, like.
but not a whole lot. Even I can figure it out.
You kind of gave me a Scott Steiner math lesson there for a minute.
So, and that's why they have their baseline score of their monster identification already written on their character sheet. So
right. So he had a 33% third chance of winning, and never mind.
So no, it's just monster identification. It's a skill that I've introduced, and some classes are more skillful than others. So illusionist is probably going to have a magic user is going to have a better time identifying maybe something than a fighter. Ranger probably more so than some other classes. Stuff like that.
Nick, you have to look up Scott Steiner math.
I don't know what you're talking about. It totally went over my head.
So we have a voicemail this week. If you'd like to leave a voicemail, 570-865-4210, the hotline. So I'm going to kick back and play this message, and see you in 2.5.
Hey, guys. DM Jesse here. I wanted to share a story with you that was inspired by one of the scenarios that you came up with on the last show from the role-playing aid, small... Little Big Spaces, haunts, and that's when you were in the when you came up with the burial mound with a loud boom. I actually experienced that in a real life adventure when I was a teenager with a friend and his dad and my dad. We went to an island in the middle of the Mobile River Delta down in South Alabama. And we were going to look at some Indian mounds on this island, burial mounds. And we went to the biggest one on the island. We went there by boat, and just the four of us, kind of winter, so we were dressed formally. And we went up there, and people had been digging on this mound and everything, and been kind of pillaged a little bit. So then my dad and my friend's dad just decided to have a smoke real quick because, they've been walking around for a while. And so they lit their pipes and were smoking. And then my friend's dad starts kind of imitating the voice of what he thought of as the possible person buried in the burial mound, the chief of the people who had lived in that place at one time, Native American people. And, a little bit mocking, and they were laughing and cutting up. And then out of a clear blue sky, I kid you not, a bolt of lightning struck a tree on the mound. and we ran like heck to another one of the mounds on the island. I don't know what made us want to go to another mound, but anyway. And, just totally white-faced and out of breath. And, it changed our lives. I don't think we ever took anything like that so lightly anymore. But so there you have it, a real-life version of the burial mound and the loud boom. Thank you.
Wow.
Yes.
This watched any movie ever in his life or his family to know never make fun of Native Americans or anybody from Hawaii? Come on.
Yeah.
Wow, that was just too cool.
Yeah. Do not take the lava rock from Hawaii.
Yeah. Do not be.
Wasn't that a Brady Bunch episode?
Yeah, that's what we were referencing.
Yeah.
Yes. Don't take the little tiki doll.
Yeah. So never make fun of Native Americans if we've learned a lesson in our life.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was
especially when
wild.
you're on top of one of the burial mounds.
Yeah, and a bolt of lightning strikes. Yeah.
You're lucky it was a warning shot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They could be a couple dead pale faces at this point.
Yeah.
Who knows what's
Yes.
actually buried in the burial mound at this point? It could be.
Yeah, you just ticked off the old Indian shaman of that tribe. Good job.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's what we have this week, and that'll wrap Sage Advice up. You want to give us a holler, you can go to rfipodcast.com. We have a contact page on the website. You can send us an email in case you don't want to use your email. You can send us an email, rfistaff@gmail.com, or you can send us a voicemail, 570-865-4210. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on G+. Or you can head over to osrgaming.org and chat up in the forums and just chat back and forth with us. Even Nick, he does go there once in a while.
Once in a while.
Yeah, once in a while.
I only talk on forums when I actually feel like I have something to contribute.
Or bitch about.
Well, that too. And that, I think, is a contribution.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is it?
It is.
Okay. So now they're saying that, let's head into table manners.
Typical. Of all the evil creatures in the world, I'd like to find one with table manners.
What are you kidding me? I spent years cultivating the worst table manners on the planet.
Table manners.
Here we go into table manners, everyone. And this week, I guess we're going to do a quote-unquote round table discussion on types of campaigns, particularly serious campaigns versus silly ones. You know, something between something that's really hardcore, serious versus something that's a little more lighthearted, maybe even campy or what have you. So, I don't know. It's kind of start out the discussion is here. I guess maybe what determines the tone sometimes is maybe what game you're playing. What did you say?
It also depends on the group of your players, too.
Yeah.
Sometimes your players want that serious, nitty-gritty, gung-ho, fight the monster, give us the riddles type campaign. And then there's every once in a while you can throw in that little goof here and there. Mm-hmm. And it really depends on your players, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah, it can. Absolutely.
Right. I think because with any game system, you can really run a serious game or a silly one. Like the example I give him with Toon. You could run Toon total straight serious using the Toon rules. Just stick it in the world of Sin City. Boom. You have a dark, gritty campaign using the Toon rule system. So the rules do not limit you to a genre. It's just they may be better suited for specific things, but you can make it whatever you want. You could run slapstick Call of Cthulhu if you really wanted to.
You could. I played in a game at Origins that was a Call of Cthulhu game, but it was Clue of Cthulhu, where we used the Clue board.
Oh, cool.
And each of us played a character out of Clue. I was Colonel Mustard. It was rather lighthearted because also my character went insane. But but it was a rather kind of lighthearted, tongue-in-cheek sort of game, and it was really fun. For a Call of Cthulhu game, it was rather surprising.
Right.
And very refreshing.
Yeah. So it really comes down to more your players. What do they want out of the gaming experience? Do they want that serious drama filled, or do they want to just gather around once a week and have a good laugh and have fun playing games.
Right. I guess one way you can look at, like I said, it depends on like what game you're playing. For example, like you said, Toon. Most of the time, Toon, for example, tends to be it is lighthearted slapstick comedy. Call of Cthulhu, most of the time, tends to be more serious, more dark, more gritty type of game. You know, I think other games though, but it does like the examples that we gave doesn't mean it's like that all the time. There are some exceptions to the rule. Now, other games like D&D, for example, is neutral in that respect.
Right.
It can lend to either or. So you have games like that where it's just it really depends on, like you said, the players and the DM and what they want out of the game too. You know.
Right. But what I think with silly campaigns, I think they have a shorter life expectancy than your serious ones, because unless you're really great at pacing and comedy, humor's really hard, whereas drama and seriousness, I think it's easier. Mm-hmm. So the jokes and the funny and the absurdity can kind of get tiresome after a while.
Right.
So if you're running I personally usually think extremely silly, wacky games are better as one-shots than long campaigns.
Right.
For that reason. So that way you don't get burned out on the jokes, the wackiness of the situation. Because there's a lot of humor in just the initial one-time, okay, this setting's just absurd, ha-ha. But after you're in it a while, it's not that absurd.
Right.
It was like I've heard, listened to some live play of a Savage World game, a couple of them. One was My Little Ponies of the Apocalypse.
That's based in one episode, Matt. What is going on now?
Yes. And then there was the companion piece. It was like the Care Bears of the Deadly Sins.
Oh my
so
God.
you were Care Bears, but you were each a deadly sin. And then you ended up doing battle with the My Little Ponies of the Apocalypse. And it was all because, like, the Care Bears and the My Little Ponies had a giant war, and somehow the Smurfs got slaughtered in the process. And when you listen to it, you just laugh at the absurdity of, okay, you have My Little Pony Pestilence, My Little Pony War, My Little Pony Death, and then Care Bear Lust, Care Bear Glutton, and so on. And it's funny, but if you were to play that every week, you're like, okay, the joke's old, and then it just becomes like any serious RPG game, except you're fluffy bears and sparkly ponies.
Dead silence.
Yeah, and that's usually what happens when you overstay your comedic welcome.
Yeah, the joke tends to die there on stage.
Right. It's like the parrot is dead, and it's going to stay dead. It's not going to be revived. It is dead.
Now, there are some games that are, for example, like humor. They are humorous, but the tone of humor is definitely different. For example, starting with Toon is kind of like our baseline slapstick. You have a game like Paranoia, which is humor, but it's a dark humor. It's a black humor to it. Right. Yes, it has some slapstick points to it, but the humor involved with it is more like, to use an analogy, would be like the movie Brazil.
Yeah. It's more Hitchhiker's Guide humor.
It's more Hitchhiker's Guide humor, exactly. So there's humor in that game, but it's more of it's a black comedy kind of humor, you know? You have games like...
Well, the game I'm going to be running is considered a joke game, too, the Ghostbusters game.
Ghostbusters, right. But okay. I would again, that was made by West End Games, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I would put that in a category like Paranoia. It's more of a dark humor in some places, a little black comedy.
Right.
But
think of the movies. The movies were comedies, but they weren't wacky ha-ha comedies. It was just they had some funny one-liners. But you could totally play those situations straight, too.
Sure.
And have,
absolutely.
like, a scary, dark movie. It can go either way depending on your presentation.
Sure. Absolutely.
Like, there is an actual play podcast for the Ghostbusters one, actually.
Oh, no kidding.
Right? Nerdy Games, I think it's called. And it's called Ghostbusters Resurrection, and they use the original Ghostbuster rules. And it's an actual play podcast, so if you're not interested in that, don't worry about it. But it has some really cool, like, they had an episode where they went and fought and tried to find the reason why this ghost with the most was haunting this place, and it happened to be Beetlejuice. So,
Oh, how awesome! They introduced Beetlejuice into the Ghostbusters universe.
yeah.
Perfect.
So it was kind of cool how they did that, and that's just an example of what they can do.
That actually, I'm thinking about that's freaking brilliant.
Yeah.
They also introduced the Necronomicon from Army of Darkness.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And I guess
So that's definitely like a dark humor, black comedy kind of stuff. I like that.
They took stuff from the real Ghostbusters cartoon and they introduced it and made it a little more serious. And so you can do whatever you want with those type of games. It doesn't mean because it's that it has to be a joke game. Or I've had people play Ninja Pizza for about 5 games and be serious, which is not a serious game whatsoever.
I mean, and another game that lent itself to humor, but it was more of a parody of itself, was Hackmaster 4th edition when it came out.
Right. I know people take it seriously, though.
I did.
Yeah.
Let's see, and I probably ran the longest campaign with Hackmaster 4th edition. I mean, 7-8 years. And that was a game where its parody aspect is in there. I mean, you read through the rule books. There's some, funny, kind of tongue-in-cheek humor there. But there's some other things that are actually built into the game. They're obviously, they're humorous elements, but they're like magic items. Like what was that? Gauntlets of wuss slapping, for example. You have Skipping Betty fireballs. Yeah. But most of it, the humor isn't forced. You see, the humor, when humor is forced, I think it loses its comedic charm. It loses something. It's just when people force the humor on you, it just doesn't work. I think people, when they looked at that game, it's like, oh, it's not to be taken serious, but it really is any game, to be honest. But it doesn't mean you couldn't play it as straight up as a regular, RPG. I looked at it as like, a combination of like 1st and 2nd edition AD&D with some other crunchy bits added in. I mean, 75% of the game was AD&D. The other 25% was like little other things that they added from like the honor stuff and some other things. But the comedy, I think, was not necessarily a crucial element to the game. Now, when they had to produce their adventures, yes, there was some sort of tongue-in-cheek humor and stuff here and there, and that was all because of the copyright thing they had with Wizards of the Coast. That was part of the reasoning behind it. But I don't know. Hackmaster was one of those games where you could play it straight or not. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I never had a problem with it.
Yeah, and really any game could be like that. It's like like the TMNT. That could easily be like the cartoon or the comic. Two completely different ends of the spectrum.
That is a really good example. That is. You're absolutely right. You could play it either way.
Yeah, you could be wacky.
The game itself?
Yeah, the game itself is based off the comic, and it's very dark and gritty. But if you wanted to run it Saturday morning Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon, you totally could with all the turtle shell puns and the turtle van and all the wackiness. You could absolutely do it and have a blast. It can be. It's entirely what type of game do you want to run.
Right.
And now I'm having visions of running a Saturday morning cartoon RPG.
There's one that just recently updated called Cartoon Action Hour Season 3.
Yes, I'll have to check that out. I'm just imagining this giant cross amalgamation of all the cartoons exist in the same universe.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Now kind of going with like some serious games like Call of Cthulhu, and I guess the offshoot of that, Delta Green. I guess most of your World of Darkness stuff.
All your Vampire, White Wolf.
Yeah, they tend to be a little more serious and gritty and dark. And I know I never got into the World of Darkness stuff. I never got into White Wolf games, or I never played Vampire the Masquerade. None of that stuff. That just never appealed to me. I like COC, and to a lesser degree, I liked Chill when it was out.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I like, if I'm gonna. I guess what I'm trying to get is, I guess it depends on what mood the overall group is in, what they want to play, what they feel like playing. Particularly if you're going to talk about a long campaign,
right?
And I think to get back to what you were saying, Matt, about like for most games that are of a humor type nature, they maybe only good for like a one shot.
Yeah, right. Because it'll burn itself out. What I've noticed, like with my group, we can run a serious game, but we're going to have our own silly moments in it and have our laughs. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably more the norm. Especially when you have a group that's comfortable with each other. When you're at like a convention game, all bets are off on what you're going to get. You could get a group of people that are just horribly silly, and you're thinking you're running a serious game, and next thing you know, you're running some wacky, crazy thing. Mm-hmm. And so with convention gaming or in games where you have no idea who you're gaming with, all bets are off of what you're actually going to get. All you have is a framework, and you just have to roll with the punches.
You're absolutely right when it comes to con gaming.
When I went to Gen Con and ran a couple games for Dead Game Society in 2011, was it? The group that I had there for playing basic D&D didn't mind. I kind of got a feeling during the game, I just kind of threw in some funny stuff, and they really enjoyed it, so I went further along with it, and they really enjoyed it. But you have to kind of test them,
right,
to see what they like, to be honest.
Yeah, and then that's a skill you just build at running games for lots of people over time, just running lots of con games, lots of games with people you don't know, so you can get a better idea of how to read them.
Mm-hmm. And I think that also I think that might also come back to, if you're going to talk about humor or comedy, I think most of that is going to come from the players. As a DM, I don't have to work really hard to find some hilarious moments that happen with my players. And I think a lot of us as DMs can probably say that, most of probably the funniest stuff, the wackiest stuff comes out of the players and what their characters do and the situations they put themselves in. So that's where I would say the majority of the humor comes from, not necessarily the rules or the game world, but from the players and what their characters are doing. Tend to be the humorous things that happen. I mean, I'm trying to think of some examples of that over the years, but this is a PG rated.
Yeah, podcast. I run into the same problem.
Actually, I could think of one. For example, Against the Giants, they were going through. We were doing that adventure. We were playing Hackmaster and doing their version of Annihilate the Giants. Still same adventure, pretty much. Not a whole lot different. But there was two characters, and it was at the very beginning. It was these dwarves. They had their crossbows, and it was at the very beginning of the Hill Giant outpost, right?
Okay.
They're climbing up they're both climbing up ropes to it was a lookout. It was one of the lookouts. And they were rolled for surprise or something like that on the Hill Giant. But they both rolled a 1 for their to hit. They both fumbled. Okay?
Okay.
they hit each other with their crossbows. So I rolled it and I played out. Okay, so this is how it pretty much happens. You got so excited that you caught a hill giant asleep on post because he was drunk, that when you drew your crossbows, you shot each other in the chest. So, yeah. Humorous things like that, and trying to picture that scene. Things like that when one of the dwarves died, they didn't leave the body, so they found these barrels of salt, so they stuck the dwarf's body in a barrel of salt to keep it preserved. That dwarf is still preserved in that barrel of salt to this day.
Wouldn't it be like beef jerky by then? Or?
Yeah, it's dwarf jerky now.
Yeah.
It's pretty much. But we still got the body if they want to do a resurrect on it, or a reincarnate, or resurrection, or a raised dead. So if we ever go to back to that campaign, that's been going on 7 years now, that one dwarf is in that barrel of salt. They could, if they wanted to. It's like, still got the body. It's been preserved in salt. It's a little chewy. But yeah, stuff like that,
Now I'm envisioning them, anytime a party member dies, they just throw them in a barrel of salt and put them in like a closet for a rainy day. We may need you one day, so we'll just keep you here just in case.
Yeah, and those are, and things like that, like and you'll get running gags in your group, Yeah. Like one of the running gags in here is like, it's made of rock, possibly stone.
Yeah, like in my group, like one of the first games we ever played together as a group, one of the players, we were all like trying to look for something in the woods. And this player rolled horribly. So bad, he saw when looking for footprints, he saw what he swore was a dragon's footprint. It was just a hole in the ground. He's like, it's a dragon. There's a dragon around here. So from there on, anytime there's a failed spot roll, you found dragon footprints.
Oh, God.
Yep, doesn't matter where. It's a dragon. Yeah.
I sometimes play like something like a dragon if they failed miserably, like they rolled well, I guess depending on the roll, if it's high or low, I guess if you rolled on 99%, it's like you tracked yourself.
Yes.
You found your own footprints and you just went in a circle.
Yes. You see these feet of, looks like a group of 6 people, heavily armed, trying through, not knowing that it's your own party's tracks.
Yeah, good job.
Yes.
Good job there, Legolas, or whoever I want to call him.
Egoless?
Legolas. Egoless?
Egoless would make that track roll and start tracking himself. Legolas wouldn't. But
Egoless, he's without egos, and that's sad.
Yes. He's just in search for the perfect waffle.
And I think as DMs we've seen that, little running gags that the players have made themselves, little running jokes, and just those, like we gave examples of humorous situations that came up in the game that the players have done themselves with their own characters,
Right.
So,
like the one time a player in my group, when he decided to sleep, cuddled up next to a log.
And that log was what?
It was just, he was snuggling with wood. Well, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, enough said. I even had humorous moments in a Call of Cthulhu game last year, I think it was. We were playing the classic haunted house introductory adventure, and where they go down, spoiler alert, everybody, when they go down, they find the Corbin's corpse and it resurrects. I had one character. They were playing a photographer. She was a photographer, a photojournalist for some magazine or some newspaper, and she was like, this thing raises up, and one of the characters, he shoots it like 3 times and it doesn't go down. She's just standing there all stunned, and she just like makes this motion with her hands like she was raising a camera, and just click. Just trying to picture that whole situation. So yeah, there's little humorous things even in Call of Cthulhu could happen. Yeah. So what about you, Vince? You running gags or running
I have
joke?
lots of running gags in my campaign. Like we have this one old wizard called Rupert that I always will bring into a campaign as a joke. He's has one vendetta against one character in the group, or one player in the group, I should say, at this point, because every time he brings his character in, no matter what the character is, like, hey, you see this old man inside the shop with a long white beard and this little scowl look on his face, his little name tag on that says Rupert, and the whole group will start blasting out in laughter. They know the dealings with this. Or they'll kind of giggle and go, oh no.
Oh no.
Yeah. Just a crusty old man that likes to just rip off people.
Now, one of the things that I thought about when we're talking about serious versus silly campaigns and stuff are, I guess, some of those people where they're playing a game and they think that, for example, if it was Call of Cthulhu, it's supposed to be serious, so it's always serious. And there's those people who, no matter what, they play it that way, sometimes to the point where it ruins the fun for the other people, if you get my drift.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, yeah.
You know, there's people like that even with D&D, where they say, well, D&D should be played this way as far as being, you know, serious, you know, swords and sorcery, that's how it's supposed to be. And I kind of cock my head. I'm like, really? Have you not read through what the original Greyhawk campaign was about?
White Wolf.
They had freaking lasers. Okay. Have you not seen any of the readings of Gygax?
I know you're not into White Wolf or the World of Darkness, but a lot of the players are like that on there. So.
Oh yeah. So if there's a little humor, they get all uppity.
Yeah.
Yeah, they won't.
Yeah.
At all.
And then there's one other game I think we should mention.
What's
it's
that?
a very scary game, Call of Cthulhu.
Oh yeah, that one just came out, didn't it?
Yes, it did. It came out just a few months ago, and you're ordinary house cats who must oppose the chaos cults of other animals.
I might not be. I'm not sure if I'm correct on this, but I did see that at yogsatoth.com. I think it's those folks who do yogsatoth.com. Am I right? Or
I think so.
It's Cthulhu.com is the name of the group.
Yeah, Cthulhu.com
okay.
was. Yeah, and it's just wacky, silly, amusing.
I wonder if they're the people that also made Cat the RPG too, where you're an actual cat and have to go around pleasing your master. I was like, oh, jeez.
They did that for Kinzer and Company, Dog the RPG. You be a dog. So. So yeah, there are those people where they have a game system that they see. And it's like, well, it should always be played that way, as far as either humor or not humor.
Yeah.
And I find it I get a chuckle out of that especially when it comes to D&D, and I think to myself, that's why D&D is, as far as the humor, is pretty neutral in that aspect. You could run it either way. It boggles my mind when someone says, well, you shouldn't play D&D that way because it's, should be kind of serious here. And, you're a bunch of adventurers trying to, find, get the gold and everything. Your lives are in danger the whole time. I was like, yeah, that's true. But doesn't mean you can't have a little humor in your character's life, right?
No, never.
No, they're completely humorless, dark, foreboding characters in a world that's uncaring, and there's evil and death at every turn.
Didn't you know Darker Dungeons is real?
It is?
Yes.
I want
that movie should be coming out of Gen Con, by the way.
Yes, the movie will be released at Gen Con. It shall be glorious.
I wonder if they're going to have it for free like they did with Gamers 3.
I don't know. Because this was actually someone else bought the rights because he won $1,000 in the lottery. So he got the rights from
that movie was
Chick
for
Tracks.
$1,000.
Well, no, the guy won the lottery. Wanted to do something with the $1,000 he won. So he went and got a hold of the guy that does Chick Tracks, and can I make your movie? And he was offered him like the $1,000 to get the rights to make the movie. And then the guy was like, Chick was like, sure, no, just take it, make the movie. And then at that point, that's when they actually did, like, I think a Kickstarter and got real funding because he realized he couldn't actually make a movie for $1,000. And then the people that did, like, all the Darkness Rising and all the gamers and all of that, they got involved with it to make this movie, and they decided to play the entire thing straight.
Yeah, I guess so. That's what I understand.
Yeah, they're like, how do you make fun of someone and do a parody of someone who thinks Cthulhu is real? They're already a parody.
Yeah, they think that, D&D is satanic. And when you reach a certain level, you do learn the real power.
Yes.
I hope they got that in writing from Chick, because him, he'll probably bounce back. Oh, look at all the money they made.
Yeah.
He's actually probably dead for all
No,
we
he's
know.
still alive.
He is? What is he, on an iron lung or?
No, he's still alive, trust me.
Wow.
Still producing stuff and still going strong.
Yep, Jack Chick.
Yeah.
So you have to pretty much, to wrap this thing up, you have to pretty much decide, based on your players, based on what you're doing, where your situation is, what type of adventure your players will like. Some players will just play anything just to play because they like the social aspect of it and don't really care. Then you have these hardcore players that just want to play D&D and nothing else but D&D, and that's it. And I know a few people like that. They just want to play D&D, nothing else. And then they don't like to have fun. They're all crusty people.
Yes.
And they don't want to play like pony friendship games like Matt does.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's magical.
Because friendship is magic.
Yes, friendship is magic.
So let's head into Creature Feature Theater while we all take a rope over the banister and hang each other, because we just reference it 4 times now.
Yes. just wait until we get into the Creature Feature.
I know.
Oh, boy.
Are you saying that I put an abnormal brain into a 7.5-foot long gorilla?
Creature Feature Theater.
And now in the Creature Feature Theater, I think it'll be safe to say you've probably never done combat with this monster. You've probably never encountered it in an RPG session, but you may have encountered it at your local grocery store.
It's your mom. Oh, sorry.
No, if only someone could actually stat out my mom. Anyways, this monster is the Keebler.
The Keebler?
The Keebler, created by Roger Moore, found in Dragon Magazine, issue 36, page 26. Keeblers are hobbit-sized beings, elvish in appearance, and inclined to be chubby. But as far as anyone can tell, Keeblers orient their whole lives to cooking and baking, particularly cookies and cake.
Yay.
Yay. They are generally carefree and sometimes make friends with small children and woodland animals. Aw. Their hearing and eyesight prevent them from ever being surprised. They don't believe in causing mischief. They also have the ability that 3 times a day they can create water, purify food, slow poison, create food and water, neutralize poison, locate objects, edible substances, as if they were a 7th level cleric. So basically they take up in the woods and they bake things and they're friends with all the little squirrels and rabbits. They all originate from the Great Nabisco tree. They will never reveal the Great Nabisco tree, even under duress. So waterboard them all you want. They will not reveal the Great Nabisco tree.
Waterboard them all you want? What?
Yes. It says even under duress, they will never divulge the location of the Great Nabisco tree. So waterboard them all you want. It's not happening.
Yeah, take that, Dick Cheney.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, you won't be able to drone that tree.
Or will you?
Yes. Dun, dun, dun. Ooh, story idea. But before we get to that, Keeblers can once a week, though, however, bake a special sort of cookie that causes the eater to save versus magic at -4 or be charmed by a Keebler. And the Keebler is likely to make you a baking assistant. Or if they're evil, they'll tie you up and leave you outside a monster lair. They're also very good for supplying food to parties lost in the wilderness. So yes, I'm envisioning, what if you've got some more nefarious Keeblers who decided, Their little baking empire wasn't big enough, so they decided to enslave an entire town to be their baking assistants, just every day churning away, making cookies, making pastries, making birthday cakes.
They're like charmed by somebody. Yes.
Yes, the Keeblers charmed this town.
What is wrong with Roger Moore?
I don't know.
It's interesting stats. They say number appearing 1.
Yes, they're very rare.
I would think like 1d6 or something like that.
You would think.
But they're only 5% in lair?
Because, yeah, they're out amongst the woods. Because
But
I
don't
think
they
their
have to be
lair...
baking all the time?
Yeah. You would think... Oh, maybe they're collecting flour. They're mingling.
Maybe it should be 50%.
Yeah, maybe that's a typo. Because they got Q, S, and X for treasure type in lair. They have no attacks.
No attacks. But magic resistance, holy cow, that rivals most demons. 60%.
With intelligence high to exceptional.
Now, their alignment, I have a little bit of a contention with. It says neutral with good in parentheses. Shouldn't it be uncommonly good?
Yes.
Well, you know.
Wah, wah, wah.
And that, my friends, is what happens when you use humor in your game. You end up with puns of that nature, especially if you're using Keeblers.
Alignment, uncommonly good.
Yes, and now I think though these would be best used with also when you're using a leprechaun, and there's something involving the Keeblers need the lucky charms of the leprechaun.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Not to mention they're also maybe looking for some fruity pebbles. Yeah. And at that point you end up with a breakfast cereal theme campaign.
Great, and I have.
Did you just hear that? That was the rope that broke when I went off the banister.
Okay.
Yes. The things you find when you go looking in the April editions of Dragon magazines. You end up with baking elves as your monster.
Ugh.
I could top you on that one, Matt.
Oh, really?
I just found, before we were doing the show, I found the rules for playing Smurfs in AD&D.
No way.
That is incredible.
Yes, I did. I just put the link in chat, and you can add that to the podcast notes.
Nice.
All right, that's just sick.
And then also, if you, on the same page on Dragon Magazine issue 36, page 26, there's also a monster above it. The DM. That's listed as well.
No.
District Manager?
Oh, yes. Sorry. This one is by Blake Ward. Frequency, too often. Number appearing, always one too many. Armor class of 1974 Dwarf Hall. Movement slow. Hit dice, a good-sized box full. Percent in lair, 100%. Treasure type, hordes. After all, somebody must have it, and the players sure don't. Number attacks, your guess is as good as mine. Damage by attack, weapon type, pencil, ruler. Special attacks create fear by the sound of rolling dice.
Yep.
Special defenses, I quit or you're dead. Magic resistance 100. Alignment, anything but neutral.
Intelligence low than non-existent.
Yes. Psionic ability, call it what you want, but he can sure make the dice perform in his favor. So, yes.
The Dungeon Master.
The Dungeon Master.
All right, then.
Yes.
Stay tuned next week when Matt brings us the stats for the Rice Krispies treat, guys.
Yes, snack, crapple, and pop.
Rice Krispies, yay.
Yay.
It's just proof positive you can find anything on the internet.
Yes.
Yes.
So I guess that's going to conclude the show on goofiness versus seriousness and all that other jazz. So tune in next week when we should possibly be all back. I will probably throw in some recordings if I can get them properly edited for North Texas RPG Con. Open down with a bunch of people like Frank, Tim, possibly more. Some of the artists that will be there. I know Jeff D will be there. So
yeah, I'll try to get some, do some reports while I'm at Origins. Record some stuff and I'll send them to you guys.
Well, if Matt's there with you, get a hold of him, and he usually has his recorder with him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If his pregnant ankles let him
Yes,
get
if my pregnant ankles cooperate, or if I can get the appropriate hover scooter.
Get a Segway.
No, that requires standing. I need maybe a rickshaw. Do you want to pull my rickshaw, Nick?
Not just no, but hell no.
That just sounds too way above the PG version of this podcast. So let's get out of here. Keep it original, keep it old school. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.
The Roll for Initiative podcast is a production of Wild Games Productions in association with D20Radio.com. You can visit us at rfipodcast.com or contact us on our forums at osrgaming.org or even by calling us at 570-865-4210. This podcast is produced for entertainment purposes only. All other uses are prohibited. And remember, if your magic missile spell doesn't automatically hit, you're playing the wrong edition. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Roll for Initiative.